welcome to This Week in Cleantech, your favorite 15-minute-ish roundup of some of the biggest stories in climate and clean energy each week. Today is Friday, July 31st. July has 31 days, wild, 2026. We've got guest Clara Hudson from the Wall Street Journal. She'll be joining us shortly. If you don't know me, I'm Factor This content director Paul Gerke, joined as always by Cleantech commentator Mike Casey of Tigercomm. Mike, how are you today?
I am awesome, Paul Gerke. Did you see that first off, we have a new listener, Amanda Roroff of Ford Motor Company.
We find out one at a time who the new listeners are. We know my name. We can count them on our fingers.
Well,
no,
you know,
I'm just teasing.
all 12, you get to know all 12 of them pretty well.
All of the disciples, yeah.
Yeah, but I think you need to pay close attention to the LinkedIn comments, because if I'm reading it correctly, she's got the green light from her CEO to give us an entire test drive track all to ourselves.
I'm sure she ran that through Ford's executive chain to see if Mike could hop in a car and go, can you play Crash Test Dummy and maybe I'll shoot the video or something and we'll make it a segment on the show? That sounds fun.
Hey, by the way, because I'm up where the air is rare, I met Governor Tim Pawlenty at SEIA this week, and it's clear they've been saving him to get him some practice to come on our show, because, you know, as a former governor, he doesn't have a lot of camera time. He's a little scared. So, but they think he's ready to come on our show. So that's really cool. That's coming up. So we have a personalized test track for ourselves and a governor who they now feel is ready for our platform.
It's
cool.
Real prestigious to sit between these two knuckleheads in a triple box, one in their home office and the other one, who knows where, behind that background. All right, Mike, we got 5 stories to get to. As always, we do appreciate hearing from you guys, the listeners, the viewers, the people that make this show possible. If you've got a story you want to see covered or something to share with us, please send us an email, TWIC, that's TWIC, at Tigercomm with 2Ms.US. Mike, story number 1 this week. Well, my dog wants to get involved in the show again. Hey, Cleo, great to see you, buddy.
Brian Mendez is not going to edit that out. We're just laying on the law.
No, he can stay this time because Theo, what are we doing, man? Come on, buddy, back under the desk. We're recording a show. Story number 1, Mike.
Katie Fehrenbacher from Axios. She has a piece. Cracks appear in the vision of off-grid AI data centers. Paul Gerke, are you cracked up?
I think we got someone checking the utility meters or something. It's one of those days around the Paul Gerke residence where there's faces in the windows that aren't normally there. I digress. A new CleanView report. It counts 59 data centers. They're planning to build roughly 90 gigawatts of behind-the-meter power. That's so much. It's gas turbines, generators, fuel cells, the works. A smaller group of about a dozen projects tracked by Occam Edge is trying to go almost fully off-grid, representing more than 10 gigawatts. Recently, a few of those projects have run into trouble. Earlier this month, New Mexico's top land official rejected a gas pipeline that was supposed to fuel fuel cells at Oracle's 2.5 gigawatt project Jupiter. You may have heard about that one. It's part of Oracle's OpenAI Stargate build-out. It's all very Star Trekky to me. That could push the project back years. A few other ones, too. A week later, a much smaller off-grid data center out in Virginia. They got a few of them out there. Lost its on-site gas turbines for 24 hours, had to run on diesel backup right in the middle of a really bad air quality day, thanks to that Canadian wildfire smoke that plagued all of us a while back. The neighbors have been complaining around a bunch of these data centers, Mike, as you know, about burning lungs, loud noise because of the generators. Caruso's Stargate site in Abilene, Texas, has reportedly gone offline for days at a stretch because of power and cooling issues. We also had that big power drop-off recently in PJM, Mike, gigawatts coming off the grid at once. What do you think about all of this?
Well, I'll tell you what I think. I think that Jigger Shaw thinks this is, quote, a flimsy way to deploy AI.
Yeah.
And he doesn't think that bullish off-grid numbers everyone's throwing around are going to hold up.
I agree.
All right. Well, there's 2 of you. Good. S&P just downloaded Oracle's credit rating to 1 notch above junk, citing its data center spending, including all that on-site power infrastructure. Trillions of dollars are riding on whether large off-grid data centers can work as advertised, justify their added cost, and win the support of local communities. Paul, story number 2.
Story number 2. It's a former This Week in Cleantech guest. Shout out Matthew Daly from the Associated Press.
Yeah,
the title of this one, Trump administration admits grants for clean energy were canceled based on politics. I saw this one in the evening, post-work hours when it was published. I immediately shared it with the wife. It's one of those things that transcends what we do for a living. It's kind of like a really kind of article. What's in it, Mike?
Okay, so the current clown car admitted in court that it canceled $7.6 billion in grants across 223 clean energy projects based solely on, quote, the political identity of the grant recipient state, end quote, so that all 16 states that voted for Harris in 2024. So fracking Secretary Chris Wrong had spent months saying cuts come down to economics, calling them, quote, business decisions based on whether projects were a good use of taxpayer money. But Chris Wrong was, quote, wrong again. The admission surfaced in a case called Thacker versus Trump. Federal lawyers said they used keywords tied to diversity, gender, vaccine hesitancy, and COVID-19 to screen out projects. It sounds like a merit-based approach to me, Paul Gerke. The money had been funding battery plants, hydrogen projects, grid upgrades, and carbon capture across states like California, New York, and Colorado. Paul, quite a way to run a railroad, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would say that, Mike. This is something that we didn't come entirely out of left field. I mean, obviously we had suspected things like this, but just to see it in bold print in a headline in the Associated Press kind of brings us all back down to earth and the reality, the gravity of the situation. Yeah. And this isn't even the first admission from the Trump administration. I did notice a lot of editorializing on the Mike Casey part of the docket, but I get it. And government lawyers, they've already conceded in an earlier filing that grant selection was influenced by whether a state, quote, tends to elect Democratic candidates, end quote. So like we kind of already knew this. This, like I said, though, a little bit more, forward and out and center. The administration has pledged about $3 billion so far to cancel offshore wind projects. We've talked about that on the show a few times, literally giving these companies money to go away and pursue gas and coal ventures instead. Democrats want accountability. Republicans hold both chambers of Congress. So I'll hold my breath. Mike, your third story.
Ian Livingston and Malcolm Moore from Financial Times. BP nears deal to sell solar business Lightsource to Kuwait-backed group. Paul Gerke.
BP is in advanced talks to sell its solar subsidiary, if you've heard of it, Lightsource, to a consortium backed by Kuwait's sovereign wealth fund. Qualitas Energy and Wrenhouse have emerged as the final bidders. Although the deal not confirmed yet could still fall through. Analysts say the real draw for BP isn't the sale price, it's offloading billions of dollars of Lightsource's debt. The sale price itself expected to be pretty insignificant for a company as big as BP is. Lightsource was Europe's largest solar developer, for what it's worth, when BP first invested in it back in 2017. It runs about 4 gigawatts of solar, wind, and battery capacity across 15 countries now, powers about 4 million homes. 2 years ago, BP paid over $500 million to buy out Lightsource's stake, taking on more than $2.8 billion in debt in that deal alone. That's an awful lot. That makes my Chase Sapphire look a lot more palatable, Mike.
Yeah. So BP had already wrote off more than $4 billion tied to Lightsource and its biogas company Archaic last year, and it's flagging another $1 billion impairment for next month's Q2 results. So the sale is supposed to be a win for new CEO Meg O'Neill, but her start hasn't gone too smoothly. BP chair Albert Manifold was just ousted over, quote, serious concerns, end quote, about his behavior, and he's publicly pushed back denying misconduct. So BP's net debt sits around $23 billion, and O'Neill wants it down to $18 billion by the end of next year. Buybacks are paused, and divestment proceeds are going straight to debt pay down. Worth noting, rising oil prices from the Iran war are actually helping BP's debt position too, which probably takes a little pressure off deals like this one to close fast. I do want to point out, as we in this country try to go backwards into the 90s and the 80s, even a country in the middle of a war zone is patiently buying clean energy capacity. So the Kuwaitis are, I think, buying on the dip, and I predict that time will prove them smart, Paul.
And I want to point something out that is not nearly as serious. Albert Manifold? What a name. I just worked with a guy from CTC Global named Theodore Paradise, and I was like, come on, man, that's your real name? It is. It's his real name. That's another great name. 2 great names for the price of one. Story number 4. Jeff St. John from Canary Media, someone we talk about a lot on this show. Trump admin bans new foreign-made inverters. What does that mean? Great question, Mike. What does it mean?
Do not hurt Jeff St. John's feelings. You know, he is a guest on this show. So like,
he has been a guest on the show. Usually we shout it out, so I figured there was beef, but so I didn't mention it.
Absolutely not. All right.
Can we create beef? I think we need a podcast rivalry.
Okay.
I think we need problems with somebody.
You go pick it. I'm just going to keep on being
I'm just planting the seeds. If anyone
wants
a street fight, podcast style, come get me.
All right. The FCC added, quote, connected power inverters produced in foreign countries, end quote, to its covered list, the government's official list of tech deemed a national security threat. Landing on that list generally bars a product from getting FCC authorization to be imported, marketed, or sold in the U.S. Inverters convert DC power to AC and are essential for utility-grade solar. What a surprise. Battery and wind projects plus home solar systems and EV chargers. The ban only applies to new device models going forward. Anything already approved and on the market, most of which is what's installed today, is untouched for now. Paul, your thoughts, sir?
Let's hope it remains untouched. That's the large takeaway. We know that solar, wind, and battery projects make up a huge percentage of new generated capacity in the U.S., more than 90% last year. Whatever happens to inverters is going to happen to most of what's getting built right now in this country. Currently approved products will eventually become obsolete, but the moment a manufacturer needs a new FCC approval for a hardware update, cybersecurity requirement, anything like that, foreign-made models won't get approval unless they land a waiver. Domestic manufacturing can cover some of the gap on storage, but companies like EPC Power and Tesla are already pretty scaled up. Chinese makers still hold about 60% of the U.S. market for utility-scale solar inverters. All right, Mike, time to bring in a fresh face, our last story of the day and our guest on this program.
Clara Hudson, Wall Street Journal. She's got a piece. Heineken is trying a heat battery to generate steam for its brewing. Clara, what's brewing with you? Glad to have you on. So if people have not read this story, which we want them to do, what is the big takeaway?
So I think what made this story really interesting and, of course, fun, as always, was the idea that there is this new way to lower emissions for what, as we all know, is a very old, ancient process of brewing beer, which relates to these heat batteries that was the focus of the piece. So essentially, the recipe of the beer is going to stay the same. The amount of heat needed to make the beer is going to be the same. But what is making the difference here is switching up how a company is going to store heat. And I also hope that people got into the story because I was talking about beer, and then, they got to learn a little bit about emissions and industrial heat also as a bonus.
That's how you lure them in. You catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar, I believe, is how the expression goes. That makes a lot of sense. Clara, we talk a lot about battery energy storage, and there is a really exciting emerging part of that space where we're talking about novel technologies. It's not just the lithium ion stuff that we're used to talking about. And this is one of those. I'm curious, when you were poking around for this story, did you see any of Heineken's contemporaries considering something like this? Are they the only big beverage player that is interested in like new age energy storage, or is there like a coven of these sort of people?
So I think that Heineken is the first major beverage company that at least I'm aware of that has been investing in this. But this is not the company that they're working with is not the only heat battery startup that exists. So another startup that I mentioned in the piece is called Antora. So they use carbon blocks for their heat batteries. So it's sort of a similar premise to Rondo, which was the focus of the Heineken piece. But I think it's also really important to mention that there's really a significant amount of financial might and backing in this space. So the piece I wrote mentioned companies like Microsoft and Aramco and BlackRock that have been putting money into these heat batteries to try and scale them up. So obviously this technology isn't super widespread at the moment, but I do think that having a really influential company like Heineken giving it a shot is a pretty big deal.
Clara, I want a question for you. It seems to me that 40%, I think, of Europe's carbon pollution comes from burning gas to produce industrial heat and steam. So industrial heat and steam is a big deal. But the next step up for thermal storage, which is by design cheaper than electricity storage, is to be able to have enough heat retained that you can produce power, electricity. Did you get a sense that that's on the horizon for some of these companies in the course of the reporting?
Potentially. I mean, the big takeaway that I see about what is happening between Europe and the US is that European companies are obviously going to be paying far more attention to carbon emissions than those in the US. But then again, it's not always going to be clear cut because you've got US multinationals that are operating in Europe. So it's like a little bit of a mess. It's a little bit tricky to think of it in such like a black and white way, I suppose. But what I think is really the broader context here is that we're seeing so much energy volatility right now with the oil and gas crisis. So the idea that you could have another solution that can give you more control, I think that is what seems so appealing. So just having a new option that you can try and then maybe scaling that up is, a promising start.
You kind of led me where I wanted to take you, Clara, and that's about the drivers behind adoption of technologies like this. I feel like in the United States, it was very in vogue to lean into the carbon emissions and the going green and the 100% by X date. That has since very much fallen out of favor in the United States, and it's more about speed to power and how much is this going to cost us, and are there any tax credits available? I feel like in Europe, the drivers are still largely based around carbon emissions. And like you mentioned, trying to survive and navigate this fuel crisis. Mm-hmm. Is that your sentiment as well, that the drivers are distinct across the pond, or do the US folks and those in Europe have more in common than we realize?
I think they have more in common than we realize. So I suppose what is important to remember is that companies everywhere need to lower their emissions and find different ways of securing energy. And that effort isn't going away, despite the political tides. Like at the end of the day, they need to be thinking about that. So they have to think about new energy solutions. And that means they're going to have to try new things and invest in new technology and maybe try something that's a little bit more out of the box.
All right. Well, Paul, we need to go to our Cleantech of the week, but I need to not skip a very important question for Clara.
Oh,
is it data centers or data centers? Because you have an internationalist background.
Yeah.
And Paul is always wrong saying data centers, and I just need you to help him realize that. So, Clara, where are we at? Data or data?
I'm afraid with the British background, I'm going to say data centers.
Damn.
What?
Let's go.
You traitor!
And we all know that
so
when somebody
sorry.
says something with a British accent, that means it's right because it sounds smarter.
No,
so
they just
sure.
the accents just show up in Roman movies, movies about ancient Rome. That's all.
You should have thrown him a curveball and said like data centers or something like that, and then we could have had a third entrant into this debate.
All right, traitor. One more. Michigander or Michiganian?
You're outnumbered, buddy.
Michigander or Michiganian? Which one?
It's Michigander.
We had Alex St. John on last time. She's from Michigan. So Michigander or Michiganian?
It's Michigander. You're a Michigoose. Let's go to the Cleantechers of the week,
right,
everybody.
fine.
We got two of them this week. I got to get to them. There's two names, not just one, Mike. Thankfully, neither one of them is that difficult to pronounce. This week's Cleantechers of the week, drumroll please. Tim Shepherd and Sylvain Marseille from Pelton Shepherd Industries. They make Nutri Ice. If you haven't heard of this, they're ice packs you can use to feed plants. I guess that makes sense. Ice becomes water, right? It's the only truly compostable gel pack. It offers the same performance as a regular gel pack, and it's obviously safe. It's not. That was a joke. Congratulations to Tim and Sylvain, our Cleantechers of the week.
All right. Well, we want to thank Brian Mendez, our wonderful producer who knows it's data centers, and Alex Peterson Claire-Quirin, who I don't know if they say it wrong or not. But anyway, we want to thank
He's
him
calling
for
out
helping
other
gather these
characters
stories.
from the Tigercomm cinematic universe to try to make it sound like he's got support in his data centers or whatever, however the heck he says it.
I'm
It's
never
data
going to forgive
centers.
you, Hudson.
We're talking about him again next week.
You're blackballed, Hudson. You're not coming back on this show.
No, we're going to have you back just to surprise Mike on his birthday or something. Thank you, the listener, for sticking around to the end of this episode of This Week in Clean Tech and appreciating the tomfoolery on this show every week. Thank you to Clara Hudson for sticking around as well and joining this week's episode and lending her expertise. Go check out that Heineken story if you haven't read it yet. Crack yourself a cold one. Enjoy the weekend when it hits you. Subscribe, leave a little feedback, share a story suggestion, do what you want. I'm not your dad. Read all the articles we talk about each week. They're in the links in the episode description and in the post on factorthis.com. Be good, people.